You're listening to Tomb Raiders, a gem of a podcast. We talk about art, creativity, entertainment, and many other topics. Hosted by Mike Lopez and Lalo Guerra.
Breaking off all units. Fire at will. 1-2, pick your target. Too many, Captain. Watch your stabilizer, Gold 6. Anybody cover me. I got 2 vultures on my tail. Gotta hold them here. Watch your left. I can't shake them. I'm hit. Where's our reinforcements?
Welcome everybody to episode 2 of Tomb Raiders podcast. I have Lalo Guerra as my wingman and co-host of this show. Today we have a very special guest. He's actually a friend, an ex-co-worker from many battles, and his name is Brandon Wainerdi. Welcome to the show, Brandon.
Thanks for having me, guys. This is so great.
Thank you, man. It's an honor having you here. So here's an intro of Brandon. From film premieres to sporting events to Comic-Cons, Brandon draws on his experiences and passions to inform a digitally focused marketing perspective, where social holds brand new possibilities for consumer engagement. Brandon went to school at Texas A&M University, sticking around for 6 years to get both a bachelor's and master's in marketing, as well as a few intense seasons of athletics marketing experience. He is an award-winning digital strategist. He reads a book a week. He also has a Star Wars podcast named Talking Bay 94, where he interviews great actors and people on the production side of the movies and shows. He collects vinyl soundtracks records, Criterion blu-rays, comic books, all sci-fi paperbacks, and movie posters. So anything you want to add to that?
I mean, that's pretty much everything. I love Star Wars and I love collecting, and Mike and I spent many an hour that should have been working talking about the latest news and the latest action figures we were buying. So
Yes, I remember talking in the middle of the halls of Richard Lerma. Hey, have you heard of this? Have you heard of that? We were talking also with a very good friend, Carlos Rodriguez. Yeah, he's a big fan. Yes. Just a big hello to Carlos.
Yes, Carlos, hello.
I'm just gonna be moving on to the question sections. And my first question for you, Brandon. With all the most recent boom of The Mandalorian and the latest news by Disney announcing more than 10 TV shows of Star Wars, how do you foresee the future of Star Wars as a brand in the next 50 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's never been more exciting, I think, to be a Star Wars fan than it is right now. You know, whether it is, you know, the theme park or all these shows we're getting, The Mandalorian especially, just like being so well received by so many different types of people. What makes me excited about Star Wars, like you said, 50 years. The original Star Wars came out in 1977, which doesn't even make that 50 years old, right? That's 43 years ago. And so really, if you think about the next 50 years, what makes me the most excited is the people that were inspired by Star Wars and Empire and Jedi from 77 to 83 grew up and are now working, right? They're working on the movies, or they're writing the books, or they're making the comic books. And what we're slowly seeing right now are the people that grew up with the prequels kind of becoming the leaders of whether it's writing or directing the show. Or Dave Filoni is a great example of being a prequel fan and then coming in and becoming kind of part of the head of Star Wars. And so I can't wait to see what happens when we get lost in this inspiration where in 20 years and 30 years and 40 years, the people that are going to be making Star Wars again or talking about Star Wars are the ones that would have grown up with The Rise of Skywalker as their favorite Star Wars movie, or the first time they saw Star Wars was as a 5-year-old watching The Mandalorian on Disney+. And so those kind of things just get me really excited because we have really no idea what people are going to latch onto or be inspired by, and I think that's super exciting.
I think it's very exciting too, and I feel like there's going to be different type of target audience. We were talking before starting the podcast, Eduardo and I, about the different type of characters for different type of audiences. So I think it's going to be very exciting, and this makes me think on my first experience as a fan when I think I was 7 years old. I remember I saw from the shelves of Cousin, I saw some very weird aliens that I had no idea what was it. And I saw a Tusken Raider, and I'm like, okay, what is this? And he told me, oh, this is a Tusken Raider from Star Wars. This is amazing. I want to know more about it, because I only knew about Buck Rogers or Star Trek, but nothing like that. That blew my mind. That Tusken Raider blew my mind. So that takes me to the next question.
Well, hi, Mike. Hi, Brandon. Glad to be back with our friends from Tomb Raiders. What was your first Star Wars experience?
Yeah, I was really lucky, and I always say, like, I was the perfect age for Star Wars. If I hadn't been born in 77 or around that time, being able to, not to date myself, I was born in 92, which means in 97, when they re-released the movies into theaters, I was able to see it on a big screen with the special editions, which was crazy. And so I got to see a new Star Wars movie every month on a big screen, and everyone was excited. Everyone was, doing KFC toys, and there were action figures in every aisle, and every chip bag had Darth Vader on it. And so I was really just kind of caught up into the whole hype. And then, of course, 2 years after that, you have The Phantom Menace come out, and you have all the prequel trilogy come out. And again, with the merchandising and with everything on TV and every single fast food toy, all this combined just made me always love Star Wars and always think about Star Wars. And it was everywhere. If I walked into a grocery store, I walked into Toys R Us. And so it was incredible time. And then even now, if you think about it, the prequels ended. And then, the same exact kind of position where I'm able to enjoy the new Disney Star Wars things that are coming out. And it's been just kind of always part of my life, I feel like. But that first special edition was really kind of the first times I really gravitated towards something in that way. So
Definitely. And all this period of time, like the 90s, was very interesting for Star Wars, because it was pretty much the special edition. When they relaunched and they did a whole campaign of original trilogies coming back, new scenes, new characters. I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. But no, that's exciting. I'm glad to hear that.
Mike and I actually saw those movies together, the special edition.
Oh, that's right. We made a party, remember? Yes, we made a party in my house. It was like 15 friends, and in one Saturday we saw A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. Obviously, by the time that we were watching the Ewoks, everybody was laying the floor like tired. And yeah, that was funny. Yeah, that was a great experience. Just by seeing all the monsters and all these creatures makes me think on your experience on Fangoria, which I thought it was very exciting and cool experience, because I remember when I first saw the magazine in the bookshelf of Fangoria, I was like, whoa, that's cool, I want one of those. So can you tell us about your experience working for Fangoria?
Yeah, so I was brought on to Fangoria because while I was working with you, Mike, at Richard Lerma, I was also kind of on the side at night and on weekends doing a website called Super Kaiju, which was comic books and pop culture and a lot of covering things that happened in Dallas and around Dallas, that were around the kind of the nerd aspect of everything. And so I was doing that for a while, and then I started Talk Bay 94 through that with my buddy Jason, and so that kind of got the attention after a while of the people that were then running Fangoria. They had bought the rights to Fangoria, they brought it to Dallas, which was super exciting, and so we got connected. And so for a year and a half, I was VP of marketing for Fango, which was incredible because you said with Fangoria and with me especially, like Starlog. Those were really things that I gravitated towards growing up, and that really kind of inspired me to really care about the people that made the movies and kind of shone a light to a lot of things that I didn't already know about. So with Fangoria, it was a great opportunity to kind of turn my passions into a career, at least for a moment, and kind of do what I loved, whether it was podcasting or whether it was writing or whether it was just kind of like talking about movies, and bring that to an actual career. And so met a lot of really great people, did a lot of really cool things, was a interesting time for sure.
And for those who don't know about Fangoria, this was a magazine just about all the production, all this creation of horror movie creatures. And correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon, but that was pretty much it. It was. The covers of that magazine were like horrible. Like you can see The Exorcist on the cover, or a monster from The Thing, or
imagine them
creepy.
trying to also promote those on social media, right? Because Facebook will flag that immediately. Got a lot of content.
Exactly, and I think it's just part of the movie business, just as the Star Wars production team does. They create creatures and they create all these amazing special effects that makes them look real. So this takes us to the next question.
Yes, which one is your favorite horror movie and how did it impact your life?
Well, that's really tough. I'm not going to cheat and say, because I have three favorite, but let me see if I can do just one. Okay. So I still love, and all three are just kind of not basic, but they are some of the best horror movies ever made. I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, have you ever seen, this random, you can only get on DVD overseas. The Shining was probably the first time that I was like, a horror movie could be something like even beyond a horror movie, right? And I always revisit it, and it's something that I always get something out of time every single time I see it. And even because I'm a big Stephen King fan, and I really wasn't a big fan of the book Dr. Sleep, and then this movie that just came out, incredible, with Ewan McGregor, I was not expecting anything at all, and I was blown away by how that told even more of a story from the Kubrick version, and it really kind of almost elevated it even more for me, which was impossible. And then I always liked it. I mean, Halloween is still probably like a perfect movie, so tight and so like pitch perfect with how it's shot and how it's acted and the scares that are in there. And then, of course, The Thing. And when we talk about practical effects, when we talk about, it is still just like so freaking cool and so gnarly. And I love it so much. So I gave you three. Shining number one, but other two very, very, very close.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely agree with you. So moving now to your podcast, Talking Bay 94. Can you tell us a little bit more on how you started it?
Yeah. So it was while I was at Lerma, and I had seen The Last Jedi, which I guess was 3 years ago at this point, 3.5 years ago. And I was just Star Wars fever, man. We were talking every day about Star Wars. All I could think about was Star Wars. And then I was like, I wonder if there are, of course there are Star Wars podcasts out there, and I used to listen to them when I was like 10 or 12, but I wonder if they're still around. And so I kind of was doing some research, and we were kind of on break for the holidays, and I ended up listening. There's a show, they know it very well, this story, but called Blast Points, which I really recommend because it's just the biggest stuff about Star Wars, and that's really the Star Wars that I love. And I ended up listening to probably 50 episodes of Blast Points within like a week of just driving around Dallas, like picking up Christmas presents or whatever. And I was just like hooked. I was like, oh, this is great. People are talking about Star Wars in a way that I really respond to. And I texted my buddy Jason, who I ran that website with, Super Kaiju, and I was like, hey, we should do a Star Wars podcast. But if we did one, I'd want it to be different. I want it to not just be like the two of us just talking every week about things that happened in Star Wars that week or whatever it was. Like what could we do that's different? And what I kind of came to was that there was a real gap in Star Wars podcasts at that time, where there weren't shows that were just one-on-one interviews with hosts and someone that worked on Star Wars. There's a bunch of other shows that do it very well. Obviously, like WTF with Mark Maron does it very, very well. The Nerdist was a big inspiration back then. Not so much anymore, but back then, every week I was like, oh, like these are really cool guests and a very conversational way to do it. And so I was like, what if we just did that with Star Wars? And spent a few months kind of building up some episodes, reached out to a few people that I had met, reached out blindly to a few people as well, and then launched it on the day Solo premiered. It's been kind of nonstop ever since, where Talking About 94, episode 94 is coming out next week, which is very exciting.
Congratulations.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah, I think so. That's kind of like a cool, like, weird number to hit. And then episode 100, obviously,
of course,
2021 pretty soon. And so it's been a crazy experience. And I've really, it's probably the creative thing that I'm the most proud of. And it's been a lot of fun.
Do you have a favorite episode?
Yeah, it's always tough, right? Picking a favorite. Obviously, as evidenced by my horror movie answer, I'm not great at picking just one. The ones that stand out to me are the ones, because I love getting to talk to people over the phone and Zoom and Skype, because that's what we've been having to do, obviously, during quarantine. But what's been even better was like going to conventions and being able to like meet these people in person and getting to talk to them, getting to hang out and really just kind of telling their story face to face. And people like Timothy Zahn, who I grew up reading, and then getting to like interview him behind the official Star Wars books booth at San Diego Comic-Con, just me and him and my producer for 30 minutes talking about everything was crazy. I did the same with Lauren Peterson, who won a bunch of Academy Awards for his work with ILM. And it was just me, him, and my producer in like a room at Star Wars Celebration alone. Like, it's a madhouse, and it was just us together. Just for an hour talking about stuff, and I brought his book that he wrote, Sculpting a Galaxy, and we went through it page by page, and he was just like pointing at things, and it was incredible. Who else? There's always like Greg Proups is a great example, and that's always an episode that I recommend to people, even if they might not like Star Wars. Greg Proops was on a show that's very popular here in America called Whose Line Is It Anyway, which is like an improv comedy show. But he also was the voice of one of the pod race announcers in Star Wars: The Phantom Menace, and so like it's like no one ever asks him about Star Wars. Or he's a very popular comedian, and so he came to Dallas, and I emailed him. I was like, "Hey, you're gonna be in Dallas. Like, do you have like 15 minutes after your show to like talk about Star Wars?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." So we go to the show, and it's a great show, and then he takes us to the green room after the show, and he just like smokes a cigarette. And his comedy openers are all sitting in a semicircle around him, and I'm here recording, asking him a couple questions, and he's just going off on stories about like him on set and him meeting Harrison Ford, and blah blah blah, like, and just kind of a weird, wacky thing to do. So those are a few of my favorite, but I'm again really proud of all 93 episodes at this point. So.
That's great, man, and especially because you sound excited about doing this. I can tell that you put a lot of passion to this, and believe me, I think many of us that listen to your podcast feel connected, and that's the whole point and reason of our podcast, Tomb Raiders, is just to collect gems, and that's what we do. We collect gems of people. The people that are behind the scenes, the people that we don't see every day, or the people that needs to be recognized, because that doesn't happen a lot. Normally, it's just one person that gets the award or the recognition, but hey, there's more, right? Mm-hmm. And well, this takes me to the next question, which is Disney. Okay, we all know Disney, which I'm a big fan, and obviously Eduardo Guerra is an amazing fan. We follow Disney for a while. We actually were going to the Star Wars celebration, but COVID-19 happened. We couldn't go. Anyway, it was frustrating, but anyway, we love it.
A little.
We love Disney, and they're masters, they're geniuses. But from your very honest point of view, do you think that Disney messed up the sequels, the movie Solo, and this period of marketing from the sequels, from the movie? What do you think about it?
I think, if we're talking about marketing specifically, I do think Solo especially is a missed opportunity with marketing, because I love Solo. I think Solo is so much fun and such a blast. Mm-hmm. And I think having it released, again, like we were talking about, Last Jedi released in December, and then 6 months later, Solo came out. And so there wasn't a lot of time.
Right.
Again, Star Wars feels like an event. Star Wars feels like it's something important. And so releasing them so close to each other, I think really did Solo a disservice, and people kind of just skipped over it and didn't really understand what it was and what was going on. Because even Rogue One was a standalone movie, but was released in December, was an entirely new cast. So the questions, the things that surrounding it were very similar to Solo, but obviously Rogue One was received much better, performed much better, but I feel like Solo is maybe not as great of a movie, but is very, very good and so much fun to watch. And honestly, one of the ones that I just will turn on just to have a blast and watch the Star Wars movie. So in that sense, I think the marketing has failed that movie particularly. But then you look at you look at the sequel movies especially, and you look at the overall box office of all time, and you're like, oh, well, okay, like they didn't do that bad at all, right? I think Force Awakens is still the best performing movie of all time, with second best performing movie of all time globally.
Right.
Like, I think after a while, we're so used to Star Wars in a very certain way, in a very regimented way, that I think the sequel trilogy, like I was talking about a little bit earlier, will be viewed like what we're rediscovering with the prequels now, in a much better light by the people that are currently growing up with them, right? And I think that's gonna be the real key to the longevity and the legacy of Star Wars, are the people that grew up with Rey and with Finn and with Poe as their trio. That then in 20 years will be like, oh, I want to buy this toy, I want to make this movie, I want to do this thing because of the sequel trilogy. So all that to be said, I think there are parts of me that are like, because I love Force Awakens and I love Last Jedi, and I didn't so much love The Rise of Skywalker as much as I loved the other ones. And so to me, it's like, okay, how can I, as a fan I'm almost 30, and technically the Star Wars movies are not being made for me, or they're not made for y'all, they're made for 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds. What can I take away from the movies and still love and still respond to, and still be like, yeah, that's cool, or that was awesome, and I really loved this character, I loved this scene, or I loved whatever, and be and have positivity, while at the same time being open to, like, it's never a good thing to just be like, yes, I love everything Disney and Star Wars is doing. Having positive criticism and like reasons to kind of challenge and push yourself as a fan, I think are very important. And I'm very lucky, and I always say, like, I'm very lucky where being able to interview the people that make these movies, I'm able to almost view them separately, right? To be like, oh, my friends or my colleagues that I talk to made this or worked so hard on this for 3 years, whatever it is. And that also affects I'm very lucky that it affects it in a very positive way for me. So all that to be said, again, we just said 10 new shows for Disney and movies and things coming down the pipeline that, if you remember, after Revenge of the Sith, there were 10 years of nothing, of M&Ms and Family Guy spoofs and Robot Chicken and all that. Like, and now we're just getting like high quality Star Wars stuff all the time, and like we're getting it so much, and like, okay, if we don't like one thing, that's great, here's 5 more things coming down the pipeline. If you don't like Last Jedi, here's Mandalorian, right? If you don't like Mandalorian, oh, here's 10 more Disney Plus shows that are coming. Like, if you don't like one of those, you probably don't like Star Wars. You know what I mean? Like, you should probably find something you're a fan of. So anyway, that's a long way to say, like, I have my problems with Disney, but overall, I think that Disney purchase is the best thing that could have happened to Star Wars.
Yeah, and also, we have to give credit to the fans, because thanks to the fans, Star Wars, it's alive. And as a Star Wars fan, there's so many categories, right? Like the very purists, or like the haters, and then there's this new legion of younger fans and younger generations of kids that love
and toxic fans.
And toxic fans, exactly. So
and
I believe that after Last Jedi, like, everybody, well, not all the fans were happy, so they kind of like boycott the premiere of Solo, and it's like, come on, dude, really?
No, I was just gonna say, like, again, I think it's important for us, as older fans, to also be reminded of, I keep going back to when I was growing up and The Phantom Menace came out. All I remember is everyone just like yelling about Jar Jar Binks and be like, I hate Jar Jar Binks, how dare they? And then I was 7 years old and went as Jar Jar Binks for Halloween that year. Like, you know what I mean? So everyone complaining, like Last Jedi is a great example. Like, I honestly think Last Jedi is probably the third best Star Wars movie of all time. But there are the fans that were like, I hated Last Jedi. And then were destructive about it, and then were toxic about it, or then made it their whole online personality, or made a whole website about it, or every time they tweet, it's just like, I hate Rian Johnson. I'm like, okay, I understand. Like, again, like, I don't super love The Rise of Skywalker. Like, it's not a big secret, but I also am not tweeting about it every day, and like tweeting at J.J. Abrams being like, you ruined my childhood, how dare you, right? Like, because it's like, okay, oh, I liked this part of Rise of Skywalker, and I loved this part, and this part I don't love that much, or this whole thing, not my favorite thing, or the pace, whatever. But again, it's Star Wars. Find something you like and move on. I talk. This is sides, but I was on a different podcast, a non-Star Wars podcast, and the host was like, "Oh, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I guess you're a Star Wars fan too. I just rewatched all the Star Wars movies with my wife, and I have some hot takes for you. Are you ready for them?" I was like, "Yeah, sure. Bring on the hot takes." He was like, okay, here, let me tell you my hot takes. Because we watched them in machete order, and so here, he's like, okay. Episode 4, A New Hope, kind of dated, not that good. Episode 5, pretty good, but boring at the beginning, and then there's only good in the last, like, 30 minutes. Return of the Jedi, I really just don't like the Ewoks, and I don't like the beginning. I think it's bad. Phantom Menace, of course, is bad. Attack of the Clones, of course, is bad. Revenge of the Sith, pretty good. Force Awakens, I didn't like. And Last Jedi, I didn't like, so we didn't watch Rise of Skywalker. And I was like, okay, so you're not a Star Wars fan. Like, you don't like Star Wars, man. I'm sorry to tell you. So it's just kind of tough, because it's like, be constructive with your criticism, but allow yourself to go on.
Definitely. And yeah, I always talk to Eduardo about this, and Star Wars marks a moment in your life. Even when you buy, I don't know, like an action figure that you like, or a collectible, it reminds you that moment when you buy it. So that's what Star Wars does. It's all about nostalgia.
Absolutely.
Nostalgic moments, and it touches us as kids again. So it's okay. You just need to relax and enjoy. So, oh my, I can be talking here forever, but anyway. Yeah, so yeah, I agree, and it's
what better excuse to see all the Star Wars movies again?
Everybody always finds an excuse. Yeah, definitely. And here's another question about marketing, because I like to know about a brand, and Star Wars is a brand now. So I'm a big action figure collector, and I've noticed that when the sequels came out, the quality of the figures was not as great as before. And you've seen it in episode 2 and episode 3. All the action figures were amazing, like details, mobility of the arms, and it was amazing. What can you say about, do you notice that transition with the toy manufacturer?
Yeah, so it's been Hasbro, right? And I think the thing to keep in mind, especially moving from the prequel trilogy to the sequel trilogy, about that 10-year period, is the generation of children that became more and more digital focused, right? They had iPads, they were playing games on their phone, or they were playing games on PlayStations and Switches and Fortnites and Minecrafts and all that stuff. And so buying toys for kids became a little bit less of a priority, and toy sales went down overall. And so what Hasbro did, which was very interesting, was what you're saying. It decreased the quality of some of its 334 line, right? Where they made it the 5 points for articulation, a little bit less. They focused mostly on the main heroes. And then did a small spin-off for a little bit more money, the Vintage Collection, right? Where they had some of the sequel trilogy characters, and those were where you'd get, cloth goods, or you would get a little more articulation. And what they were trying to do was establish a market for the child toy, the parents buying Christmas gifts for their kid or whatever it was, and then create a fully formed adult collectible unit, right? And I think some of the disconnect there, for better or for worse, was they introduced the 6-inch line, the Black Series line, which I think is great. It's really great. It does take away, though, from some of their focus for the 334s, right? Because when they see it on their whiteboard or whatever it is, they're saying, okay, we have some of these small toys coming out, the 334s for adults. We have most of them coming out for the children, and then the majority of our adult focus is going into the Black Series. But then you're seeing things like HasLab, I think is a great example, with the Barge and with the Razor Crest, and giving the collectors an opportunity to now invest more in the products that they would actually respond to. And I'll be interested to see as we move past now the sequel trilogy is done, because what I loved about those toys that were coming out for the 334s weren't necessarily even the points of articulation or whatever it was, or the quality. It was just the weirdness of the characters we were getting and the background characters and all that stuff. And we have such a breadth of new characters, that I think it's important. Like, we still don't have a Black Series of Luke on Crate, right? There's all these new things that we still don't have, let alone, the great opportunities we had during, especially that dark period, that 2005 to 2015, where they were like, okay, now we're going to give you every single Cantina alien, we're going to give you every single Jabba Palace alien, we're going to give you every single, and so that's something that has been missing. I think that will happen eventually, but I think it's mostly just like the toy market in general, even if you go look at Target right now, is radically different than it was when Attack of the Clones was coming out. So it's just a very interesting kind of dichotomy to everything happening, as you have adult collectors moving more towards Hot Toys or the Black Series figures, or then these HasLab projects, and see kind of what collectors are really looking for. So I'll be interested to see what happens.
Very interesting. Very good answer, because Star Wars is not only about the toys or the action figures or the movies. It goes beyond. It goes like to different levels of cult. All these fans around the world that play video games or role playing. It's just crazy. It's just phenomenal, and it's been growing.
Comic books,
exactly. The period before Disney and after Disney, even we have it on Disney now. We have the Galaxy's Edge, which you guys been. I haven't. But I will, hopefully. So here's my next question. And this is a very simple question and tough question. What's your favorite quote from all the saga?
I really love, again, we're talking about Last Jedi a lot. And the moment that Yoda reappears in The Last Jedi, and that whole scene is just the best. And that's Star Wars at its peak. And probably one of the best scenes of Star Wars of all time. And so when Yoda tells Luke, like, that is,
yes,
we are what they grow beyond, I think is so powerful. Yes. And it's really a summation of not only Luke's journey, but the journeys that we've seen of Qui-Gon and of Obi-Wan and of Yoda and of Luke. And now we see it with Mando, we see it, with Ahsoka, we see it with everyone. And it really summarized so succinctly what people gravitate towards Star Wars for, and so I always love that. What we are what they grow beyond. It is just so powerful and so succinct.
And failure. It's our best teacher. That was pretty powerful.
Brandon, I'm happy to agree with you on Yoda's quote. So the entire process of Caitlin Kennedy has been questioned by fans, by some decision making about the direction of Star Wars, its history, its characters. From your point of view, do you think that Dave Filoni will be the next president of Lucasfilm?
I don't know if it'll be Dave. It might be Kevin Feige. I could see Kevin Feige doing it from Marvel, because that's the only reason he would leave Marvel, right? He's a bigger Star Wars fan than he is Marvel, and he loves Star Wars. And I know there was initial conversations about him maybe spearheading some projects. And so if and when Kathleen ends up leaving or retiring or whatever it is, I could see them going for someone like Kevin Feige. I don't know if Dave would want to be president, honestly. Like, I mean, you have to even think what he's doing this year. What he's doing this year is his first time ever directing live action, right? And there was actually a little featurette with him yesterday that Star Wars put out, where he was talking about he never thought that he would do animation forever, right? And he did animation, and then he was given these opportunities. I just got this great Art of the Mandalorian book that just came out from Phil Shostak, and there's detailing all these things where Kathleen was sending him to all the sets. She sent him to Rogue One. She sent him to Last Jedi, where he was able to see firsthand how a live action thing is put together, right? And then Ram Bergman and Rian Johnson were hands-on with him during Last Jedi, showing him, like, here's how you direct live action, which I think is so cool. And so I'm very interested to see what his career trajectory looks like now, because he's already accelerating at a rate that maybe we weren't anticipating, right? You see the success of Clone Wars, you see the success of Rebels, and then you see him come back to Clone Wars, and now with The Mandalorian, he is getting into a new skin still, right? And so he still has this Rangers of the New Republic show that was announced. He still has the Ahsoka show that was announced. And so those, I think, will be his big focuses for at least 5 years, let's say, because Mandalorian still is not going to end for a few more seasons, and then he'll have a few more seasons of these shows. And then it'll be what's next for him. Is it going to be directing an actual Star Wars movie? Is it going to be going somewhere else and starting his own thing? I don't know. What's interesting about Kathleen Kennedy, because I go back and forth with, has Kathleen Kennedy ruined Star Wars? What is the direction Kathleen Kennedy is taking Star Wars? Whatever it is. And I think it's very interesting because, again, Kathleen started as Spielberg's assistant, right? Like, assistant throughout the years, and then worked her way all the way up to being a producer, right? Worked on all the indie movies. She's in Temple of Doom as one of those dancers at the very beginning. And so she has this history of working on the biggest and biggest projects, right? You have Jurassic Park with her. You have all these things. And so then when you get to her being George's handpicked replacement for the next future of Lucasfilm, right? His baby. It's very interesting to see how she approached it, right? Which was first, 2015, just Force Awakens. Let's just focus on Force Awakens. Let's have the first introduction people have to the new saga be very serious. Kylo Ren's evil, Darth Vader's evil. Let's really focus on this new trilogy. And now that the sequel trilogy is over, I'm very excited to see what she does, right? Because in my mind, she has not messed up or done anything. There's an opportunity for her to make a misstep or something like that moving forward. But even like what we just saw with this investors panel, and then she's saying, okay, thank you very much. And behind her is, 12 things, right? Like, that's crazy. Again, like, George Lucas never had that many Star Wars things going on at the same time. I think again, the future of Star Wars is so secure. We know what we're going to be watching every Friday morning for the next 5 years because of Kathleen Kennedy, that it's tough for me to be like, okay, like, what do I want next? Because we haven't even gotten the full Kathleen Kennedy thing yet. And I feel like there's all these YouTubers that are every week, they're like, Kathleen Kennedy got fired, we just don't know it yet. And I'm like, I don't know about that, because she did just like publicly say like the 10 shows she's been working on for you guys. Anyway, I think people will always find a reason to complain. I would love to see Dave Filoni in a more senior role, and I think he's getting that. I think he is the shepherd of the brand. He is the Kevin Feige of like the directions everything is going right now, which is very interesting to me. I'll be curious to see, because they're really focusing on connective tissue, kind of stealing a little bit from Marvel, which they don't really need to do. In that like Bad Batch trailer, you see Fennec Shand make an appearance from The Mandalorian. Okay, so they're all connected. They're all working a little bit together. And so I think if Dave can serve that role, right? There's an official role called Keeper of the Holocron, which Leland Chi is. But if he can kind of be that connective glue for everything, he doesn't necessarily need to be the president to do that. He can just be the guy that everyone turns to as the protege of George Lucas to like keep the mythos and understand the Force better than we do, understand the Jedi better than we do, understand all these things. And so I think that is more exciting for me than anything, than him being a president or a CEO. Like let him like be creative and have fun and mess around.
Agree. So. Yeah, totally agree. And I remember Dave Filoni itself mentioning that one of the behind the scenes of The Mandalorian on Disney Plus, he's talking about his first interview with George Lucas, and he's there with George Lucas talking, and he's pretty much like, I felt George Lucas was passing his torch to him in a way. He even felt responsible of carrying that torch, but at the same time it was going to be just animation. But now he's moving into live action, movies and TV. So you can see it on the last, well, not the last episode, on Ahsoka's episode that he directed. Anything else that you want to add, Eduardo?
No. It was a fun episode. And Brandon, we will follow your podcast with great interest.
Exactly. I like that. Yeah, Brandon. It was an honor having you here. I bet you're gonna have a lot of like followers that are around the world, hopefully, or in another planet or in another galaxy. We don't know. Maybe this podcast is gonna be hacked by aliens and take to another planet. That'll be fun. But it was amazing, man. We can be here talking forever. But
again, just a real treat to be able to talk to you both, and hopefully I didn't rant too much about Star Wars during this episode. But I obviously love it so much, and it really just kind of took me back to me going over to Mike's office and just gabbing about Star Wars for 45 minutes. So yeah.
Your social networks, Brandon.
Oh yeah, you can find Talking Bay 94, especially everywhere at Talking Bay 94. As a social strategist, it was very important for me to be consistent. So yeah, at Talking Bay 94. Twitter is probably the most updated, and I'm just always on there, I feel like, and then Instagram if you want to follow there as well, and then the podcast you can listen to pretty much everywhere you can listen to Toon Raiders. So definitely check it out if you like Star Wars in any way.
Awesome. And you have a personal website, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to this episode and you're like, wow, this guy knows a lot about marketing, then yeah, go to Wainerdi.com, and you can see the stuff that I've done in the past. And if you want to work with me or want to talk to me about marketing, I do a lot of personal branding and stuff like that. So
he's a digital Jedi, so this guy is amazing. Thank you so much, Brandon, and see you next time.